A man was just about to get off the bus when he accidentally bumped into a beautiful woman nearby. But the next second, Ina noticed that her designer handbag had a large cut in it. She quickly stopped the man, Jin-woo, and loudly asked the driver to close the doors to keep everyone on the bus. Soon, all the passengers were brought to the police. When the police asked if she had any suspects in mind, Ina turned with a sly smile and immediately pointed to Jin-woo. Jin-woo found her accusation amusing, but Ina directly said, "You bumped into me on purpose, didn't you? Just so you could steal my wallet." When Jin-woo questioned her, asking for the exact time of the collision, Ina couldn't recall. At that moment, Jin-woo quickly reconstructed the scene in his mind and told her that the time was 3:08 p.m. On bus number 5674, he described the woman sitting next to Ina as being over 1.65 meters tall, wearing white headphones, a green coat, and jeans. His precision made Ina laugh. Jin-woo actually found the woman in the crowd, but even with all those details, the wallet still wasn't found. So Jin-woo went a step further. He mentally returned to the scene and seemingly froze time. Everyone around him stood still. He noticed the bag had already been slashed at the moment of the collision, meaning the incident didn't happen on the bus. He focused instead on the bus stop before they boarded. Eventually, he identified a man in a military green down jacket. The suspect wore jeans, a Rolex watch, and again, Jin-woo accurately stated the license plate number. Ina burst out laughing, thinking he was just making wild guesses. But then an officer mentioned they were already investigating a stolen vehicle with that plate. The police chief was impressed by Jin-woo's photographic memory and praised him, though Jin-woo replied that it wasn't over yet, the thief was still among them. As everyone looked around, he pointed at a photo on the wall. It was Woo Zongxiu, a man with 15 prior theft convictions. With this, he proved his extraordinary memory to Ina. In another scene, a group of wealthy young men lined up a row of beautiful women and took out a car key worth millions, asking who wanted it. A woman in red stepped forward, but the man took a drink and made a strange demand, to bark like a dog and drink the alcohol from a plate. No one dared step forward, except a woman in white. She went ahead, barked like a dog, and licked the alcohol from the plate. The rich man cheered, but when she asked for the car key, he suddenly backed out and made an even more humiliating demand, to crawl on the table like a dog and wag her tail. The woman felt insulted. When the man pointed at her head mockingly, she didn't respond emotionally. Just then, one of his friends came in and ordered everyone out. As the woman in white left, she subtly adjusted an ashtray on the table, turning the camera inside it to face the men. She wasn't a hostess at all, but an undercover agent hired by a lawyer to expose the rich man's secrets. Later, the friend picked up the ashtray and found the hidden camera. The recording was cut off, but the footage had already been copied. With that evidence, they could fully expose him. Just days earlier, Ina, a part-time singer, had been led into a luxurious underground club by a legal assistant named Younga. The guests were powerful officials and wealthy heirs. After Ina finished her performance and returned to the dressing room, the wealthy heir suddenly barged in. Reeking of alcohol, he stared at Ina inappropriately, then cruelly assaulted her. Afterward, as if nothing had happened, he pulled money from his wallet and threw it on her body. As she struggled to stand, she saw the heir trying to leave. Humiliated beyond words, she grabbed a wine glass, smashed it, and charged at him with the jagged edge. The heir looked on with a cold smirk. A scar slashed across his handsome face, making him even angrier. He slapped Ina to the floor, yanked her by the hair, and was about to strike again. Ina shoved him away and ran, but unfamiliar with the place, she stumbled through the corridors and was soon cornered by the heir. He held a knife and wore an excited expression. Ina was terrified. The heir started a cruel game of cat and mouse. Ina fled into a grove of trees but fell in panic, hiding behind a pile of logs. She thought she was safe, but he soon approached. Still drunk, he stabbed her. Ina stopped breathing. Unbelievably, the heir lay down beside her and fell into a peaceful sleep. When he sobered up the next morning, he realized the horror of what he'd done. He quickly called his assistant to clean up the mess. After the scene was tampered with, Jin-woo's father happened to find Ina's body. As he reached for his phone to call the police, his dementia flared up. Holding his head in pain, he collapsed. Thankfully, Jin-woo arrived in time. The police soon began investigating Jin-woo's father, who claimed to remember nothing. When the heir's father learned of the situation, he breathed a sigh of relief. He then bribed the lead prosecutor. Under pressure from public opinion, the prosecutor instructed the police chief to find a scapegoat. At the funeral, the police suddenly arrived with a warrant and took Jin-woo's father away. The prosecutor soon held a press conference, stating that the girl had been murdered and Jin-woo's father had confessed. Being poor, Jin-woo and his father were only assigned a public defender. But when the lawyer showed up in court, Jin-woo was shocked. It was someone clearly unqualified, barely able to speak coherently. The courtroom erupted in laughter. Meanwhile, the prosecutor exaggerated the crime, saying one stab could have killed the girl, yet she was stabbed multiple times. He claimed the accused feigned amnesia to escape punishment. In the audience, Ina's father stood up in fury. He snatched a pen and rushed the defendant, screaming for the death penalty. The scene grew chaotic. Just then a man stopped him. Jin-woo immediately recognized him, his perfect memory kicking in. The man was a top-tier lawyer, Dong-ho, famed for his flawless record in criminal defense. Desperate to prove his father's innocence, Jin-woo ran into the street and risked his life to stop Dong-ho's car. But Dong-ho only cared about money and dismissed him coldly. To his surprise, the very next day, Jin-woo appeared in Dong-ho's office and placed a full envelope on the desk. Suspicious, Dong-ho questioned how a high schooler could have so much money. Jin-woo replied that he earned it himself, in just a few hours. Dong-ho didn't believe him, so Jin-woo revealed the truth. He had a photographic memory. Earning that money was nothing. To raise the cash, Jin-woo had gone to an underground casino. Using his memory, he memorized the sequence of cards and beat the house. Just as Jin-woo finished collecting the money and was about to leave, a group of thugs with clubs surrounded him. Ina disguised herself as a delivery person and sneaked in, opening a bottle of coke and spraying the thugs to create a distraction. The two seized the opportunity and ran, but they were eventually cornered on the rooftop. Jin-woo made a bold decision. He grabbed Ina and jumped off the building. Luckily, they landed safely on a sand truck and managed to escape. Seeing Jin-woo's incredible memory and bravery, Dong-ho chose not to take any money from him. Instead, he pulled a banknote from his bag, signed it, and treated it as a symbolic contract. They then went to visit Jin-woo's father, who revealed that the police chief had once forced him, at gunpoint, to sign a false confession. Realizing this could be the key to overturning the case, they dug deeper and reinvestigated. Jin-woo recalled that when his father was arrested, the chief had carried a gun. At the next court session, the opposing lawyer brought the police chief in as a witness to claim Jin-woo's father was the murderer. The judge then asked Dong-ho to present his counter-evidence. Instead of responding directly, Dong-ho pointed at the police chief, making him unexpectedly the key witness for the defense. Dong-ho accused the chief of illegally detaining the suspect and coercing a false confession. The chief denied the accusations, so Dong-ho asked him to produce his gun. As he did, Dong-ho accurately described it as a 6-shot revolver, and using Jin-woo's memory, he named the engraved initials on it. Sure enough, the initials matched. Dong-ho explained that Jin-woo's father had noticed the initials during the forced confession. This clever move left the chief stunned. Dong-ho requested the court to withdraw the confession, and the case was temporarily suspended. Now they had to find the real killer. To do that, Dong-ho went undercover and planted a hidden camera. It successfully captured the rich kid admitting to the murder of Ina. Dong-ho informed Jin-woo that the evidence would be shown in court the next day and that it would surely overturn the case. The whole family was overjoyed and decided to go on a short road trip. However, they didn't realize a truck was speeding toward them. A moment of distraction caused the truck driver to crash into their car. Jin-woo's mother and brother were killed instantly, while he and his father survived. Unbeknownst to anyone, the truck driver's son was Dong-ho. Years later, Dong-ho had become a successful and righteous lawyer, eventually getting involved in the murder case of Jin-woo's father. In an effort to atone for his biological father's past, Dong-ho committed himself to clearing the father's name. Just when he was confident of winning in court, a surprise witness, the doctor, suddenly gave false testimony. Desperate, Jin-woo stood up in court and named the real killer, urging Dong-ho to present the video evidence. But to everyone's shock, Dong-ho froze. Jin-woo was devastated. In a fit of emotion, he grabbed Dong-ho, but Dong-ho remained cold as security escorted Jin-woo out of the courtroom. It turned out that just before the trial, Dong-ho's adoptive father had convinced him to intentionally lose the case in exchange for a major construction contract. After his biological father's death, Dong-ho's adoptive father had taken him in and raised him, even helping him become a top lawyer. Out of gratitude, Dong-ho chose silence. Meanwhile, In-ah's father was going through her belongings and found a business card. He urgently called a lawyer named Hong and claimed that his daughter's death was connected to the Ilho group. What he didn't expect was that his daughter's own defense lawyer was in league with the murderer. The next day, news broke that In-ah's father had committed suicide by hanging. In court, the opposing lawyer even produced the murder weapon, which had blood that matched the victim's. If that weren't enough, they forged a suicide note from In-ah's father in an effort to convict the wrong person. Jin-woo, now cold and disillusioned, lashed out and attacked a group of people. He no longer trusted anyone. 4 years later, he suddenly appeared in court, now a well-known lawyer. In-ah had also become a prosecutor. Together, they continued their legal battle against corruption. One night, a barefoot, battered woman appeared at the police station, leaving everyone shocked. Crying and in a dazed state, she collapsed to the ground. She was there to report a sexual assault. Earlier that evening, during a company celebration, Hannah had been pushed toward the vice president. Egged on by coworkers, she drank a symbolic love shot with him. As an intern, she couldn't refuse. Later, while helping the drunken VP to his car, he suddenly dragged her inside and assaulted her. The police quickly arrived and arrested the sleeping vice president. Upon hearing this, the company chairman didn't want a such person remain in the firm. Seeing his father's reaction, Cha Byung, the chairman's son, smiled smugly. He had set the VP up. During an earlier award ceremony, the chairman had given the VP all the credit, infuriating Ji Won, who then schemed against him. Prosecutor In-ah bravely offered to defend Hannah, but her boss refused. Undeterred, she followed the boss to the restroom to plead her case. Unable to resist her persistence, he finally gave in. At the first hearing, based on Hannah's testimony, the VP's guilt seemed certain. The defense lawyer barely argued. Ji Won wanted him to lose. Sensing something off, Jin-woo met with the company's personnel director and learned about the VP's long-standing conflict with Ji Won. He then approached the VP himself and offered to defend him, revealing Ji Won's plot and a list showing the VP had long been targeted internally. With no other options, the VP allowed Jin-woo to represent him. During the second hearing, Jin-woo brought in Hannah's ex-boyfriend, who was once her college mentor. Their past relationship had led to legal issues, and he was eventually forced to pay her a large settlement. Using this, Jin-woo claimed Hannah had a history of deceit, arguing that her lies could ruin an innocent man's life. The chairman, upon learning the VP might win, instructed Director Ju to intervene. Meanwhile, In-ah received an anonymous tip and obtained a video recording, which was played in court. It appeared to clearly show the crime taking place. Even the VP doubted himself. But Jin-woo, with his sharp memory, immediately noticed a flaw. The man in the video wore no ring, yet the VP's ring was listed among his personal items during the police report. This flipped the case entirely. To validate the video, Jin-woo asked Hannah to testify and pointed out her mother had just undergone cancer surgery. How could an intern afford such costly care unless she was motivated by money? Pressed hard, Hannah broke down in tears and, looking at the VP's daughter, finally admitted he was innocent, that nothing had happened between them. In-ah was stunned. After the hearing, she chased after Jin-woo, insisting they couldn't abandon Hannah. But Jin-woo reminded her that as a lawyer, his job was to defend his client, not uncover the truth. As he left, Soo-yeon approached him, and the two walked off together. When Ji Won found out the VP had been cleared, he flew into a rage and wanted to tear Jin-woo apart. Just then, his sister Soo-yeon arrived with Jin-woo, and the atmosphere turned tense. Sparks flew as the two faced off, and Jin-woo boldly declared war. It turned out that Young-woo had already found a key witness from the past who could help prove his father's innocence. He begged her to tell the truth, but she panicked and refused to admit anything, even threatening to call the police if he persisted. Just then her daughter arrived, and Young-woo handed her his business card. saying she could contact him anytime. However, this entire encounter was witnessed by GWI Wang's assistant. Realizing the danger the witness posed, he sought out Director Ju to eliminate the threat. Initially unwilling, Director Ju was blackmailed with his own son's information and, fearing he might lose everything he had built, reluctantly agreed. He went to a small weapon shop and provided money along with the target's photo. Soon after, a man quietly snuck into Youngwoo's home and set up steel wires to trap him. Meanwhile, Ina was closely following the developments in Youngwoo's retrial case. Just then, Youngwoo received a message that the witness had finally agreed to testify. He rushed to the scene, only to discover she had already been attacked. A group of people burst in, led by the same police chief who had once threatened his father. Youngwoo instantly realized he had walked into a trap. In desperation, Youngwoo smashed a window and escaped. He was soon declared a fugitive. Ina was shocked by the news, as was Soo-yeon. The police chief arrived at Soo-yeon's studio to search for evidence. While the team scoured the place, Soo-yeon tried to stall them when it seemed they were about to find a hidden basement. Once they left, Youngwoo, who had been hiding, sneaked into the basement to retrieve critical files. In, worried for his safety, arrived soon after. She followed him into the basement through the hidden entrance, and Youngwoo revealed that he had fallen into Nam GW Wang's trap. Suddenly, someone entered. It was Dong-ha, who reminded them that the contract he had signed with Youngwoo was still valid, and he was there to help. But In-na remained skeptical of him. To clear his name from the murder accusation, Youngwoo revealed a USB drive containing records of the conglomerate's secret slush funds, a gift from the vice president in gratitude. He used this as leverage, giving GWI Wang a deadline of 3 p.m. to reveal the real killer or face public exposure of the company's crimes. GW Wang, unfazed by the threat, instructed Dong-ha to capture Youngwoo instead of turning in the killer. Left with no choice, Youngwoo went public with the company's corruption through media. But GW Wang remained calm. He had already dispatched the police chief to capture Youngwoo. When they stormed the room, Youngwoo was gone. He had cleverly used a remote livestream to broadcast his message, but just as he began, thugs burst in and captured him. Dong-ha, surprisingly, pleaded with Youngwoo not to confront GW Wang directly and offered to help him escape and hide. However, the police chief leaked their location to GW. Dong-ha got a call instructing him to deliver Youngwoo to a specific location. Once there, Dong-ha appeared to turn violent and handed Youngwoo over to the police chief. The chief then pretended to release Youngwoo, but as Youngwoo began walking away, the chief pulled out a gun and fired. Ha-byung, watching from afar, smiled smugly and ordered his assistant to drive off. What he didn't expect was that Youngwoo had survived. Dong-ha had intervened at the last second, urging him to flee. Youngwoo then went to In-na's home, the only person he still trusted. They reviewed the case and noticed the murder method was unusual. Under the victim's fingernails, they found red fiber strands. This led Youngwoo to recall a visit to the victim's home and remember seeing a man in a red sweater with a scorpion tattoo on his wrist. They compared this description with criminal records and identified a suspect. The next morning, In-na woke up to find Youngwoo already gone. She quickly organized a search team. At a supermarket, she spotted a man with a scorpion tattoo and began following him while calling Youngwoo. But at a corner, she lost sight of the suspect, and before she could react, someone knocked her out with a brick. Youngwoo soon realized something was wrong, especially after losing contact with her. Youngwoo learned from a clue involving a watch store that helped him pinpoint the suspect's exact location. Meanwhile, In-na regained consciousness. The suspect pulled a steel wire from his watch, clearly intending to kill her. Just in time, Dong-ho smashed the glass on the circuit box and burst in, demanding the man release In-na. But the man didn't hesitate to attack Dong-ho as well. A fierce fight broke out, ending with Dong-ho slamming the suspect's head into the cabinet and pinning him on the table. Youngwoo arrived shortly after and found that In-na, though terrified, was unharmed. The murderer was successfully arrested, and with his capture, Youngwoo was finally cleared of the murder charges. At a press conference, Youngwoo publicly demanded a retrial of his father's wrongful conviction. Upon seeing the news, the old chairman, his grandfather, was furious once again. Elsewhere, a horrifying scene unfolded. A car was slowly being crushed, and the man tied to it was none other than the corrupt police chief who had covered up the past case. Director Ju, now revealed to be part of a gang, arrived and coldly ordered his men to make sure the body was disposed of without a trace. But just as the mechanical claw descended, Young-woo suddenly arrived, dragged the driver out of the control room, and used the machine to fend off the thugs. He blocked the road with a wrecked car just as Lawyer Song drove in. Together, they rescued the police chief and escaped. Grateful for Young-woo's saving his life, the police chief finally agreed to testify. Meanwhile, In-ah had been investigating her superior, Prosecutor Hong, and secretly recorded him abusing his power to cover up scandals for the corporation. Hong, smug and dismissive, thought he could easily transfer her to a remote post. Infuriated, In-ah resigned the next day and vowed to bring him to justice even without the prosecutor's badge. She then joined Young-woo's law firm, determined to help him seek justice. Just as they celebrated her joining, terrible news arrived. Young-woo's father had suffered severe stomach pains days ago in prison, but the doctor refused to treat him. He collapsed and was taken to the ICU. When Young-woo rushed to the hospital, his father was already critically ill. Time was running out, and Young-woo knew he had to clear his father's name before it was too late. As the retrial began, Young-woo was shocked to find the original judge replaced. It turned out that the court director had been bribed and replaced the fair young judge with a more controllable one. Despite this, Young-woo remained confident. He had brought in the witness who had forced his father to sign a false confession. At first, things looked promising. But when asked whether the confession was obtained through illegal detention and coercion, the police chief suddenly smiled and denied everything. It was a betrayal, clearly orchestrated by Nam Ji-won. The courtroom was filled with his people. Young-woo was devastated. Just then, Dong-ho rushed in with Lawyer Sang, intending to present a video of Nam Ji-won murdering Xiaojing. However, thugs had intercepted him, and his adoptive father had taken the video to prevent Dong-ho from getting himself killed. Despite this, Dong-ho came to check the case's progress. During the hearing, Young-woo received a call. His father had just passed away. Filled with grief and rage, Young-woo condemned the justice system. Those with power could walk in and out of prison freely, while the powerless couldn't even receive basic medical treatment. Despite his efforts, the court upheld the original verdict. But Young-woo had secretly installed a camera that captured the police chief accepting a bribe. He submitted the footage to the police, clearly showing the chief boasting about his alliance with Nam Ji-won and his greed. Instead, it was handed directly to the judge, who accepted it as valid. With this, the legal proceedings moved forward, and Ji-won found himself facing the harsh reality of his actions. In the midst of the trial, however, the old chairman, desperate to protect her son, arranged for another assassination attempt on Dong-ho. Zhou, tasked with carrying out the hit, hesitated. He couldn't bring himself to kill Dong-ho. The two men discussed the matter in the car, but when Dong-ho exited the vehicle, a mysterious man suddenly appeared, stabbing Zhou. The assassin named Dong-ho for the crime, planting the weapon in his home. Dong-ho was immediately arrested, to the already tangled web of corruption. Meanwhile, a wealthy second-generation heir, known for his violent outbursts, sought treatment from an old tradition in others' shoes. This only enraged the heir further, and he lashed out, nearly killing the elderly doctor. The heir's sense of entitlement and disregard for others was evident, especially in his treatment of the women he had abused. The situation continued to spiral out of control, with more betrayals and schemes unfolding in the fight against Ji-won's empire. Would Young-woo and his allies be able to bring him to justice, or would they fall victim to the corruption that ran deep within the system? Replaced by Jin-woo. The scene continues to unfold with increasing tension and revelations. As the girl dropped everything she was holding, terrified, she dared not resist Ji-won. He forcefully lifted her and pushed her toward himself. Ji-won attempted to solve the issue once again by offering money, hoping to prevent Min-shi from testifying in court. However, his plan backfired. In-ah, along with Summer-in, found Min-shi, who was once her close friend, and they both had suffered at Ji-won. She bravely took the stand and exposed Ji-won's numerous crimes, of him exploiting her, making it harder for him to escape justice. At the same time, Dong-ho, wrongfully imprisoned, found himself in an unbearable situation. His assistant, frustrated and desperate, sought out Jin-woo. Initially unwilling to defend Dong-ho, Jin-woo, as a lawyer, was committed to preventing the wrongful conviction of any innocent person. He realized that without Dong-ho, it would be impossible to stand up to Gwon and his father, so he reluctantly agreed to take on the case. Jin-woo's plan was simple: to free Dong-ho. Jin-woo and his colleague, Hee-boo, put their plan into motion. They managed to extract a crucial piece of information from one of Gwon's associates. It was then revealed that Zhou, the old chairman, fearing that Zhou's memory would expose the truth, sent assassins to eliminate him. However, the assassins mistakenly targeted the wrong person and attempted to kill Shang-hee instead. Jin-woo and the police quickly apprehended the assassin. Back in the courtroom, Jin-woo made a dramatic entrance, rushing to the defense table, explaining his tardiness and suggesting that the prosecution should answer for the delay. The prosecution, receiving an anonymous tip, immediately moved to dismiss the charges against Dong-ho, as the true suspect had been captured. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief, and Summer Yin's courageous testimony helped affirm the case against Gwon. After Dong-ho was released, he visited his adoptive father's hospital bed, but tragic recordings implicating the old chairman in a plot to have Dong-ho kill Won's rage erupted once more when he discovered a video recording that exposed his violent actions. Enraged, he smashed the laptop, showing his true, uncontrollable nature. This footage was soon leaked to the media, forcing Gwon's father to intervene. To cover up the scandal, Gwon's father pushed for a prominent prosecutor. It was In-ah who had reclaimed her position as a prosecutor. In-ah, unaware of the larger plan, was shocked to learn of In-ah's role in the operation. It turned out that this was all part of a bigger scheme to infiltrate the old chairman's circle and gather the evidence needed to bring Gwon down. At the same time, once again lashed out at his employees, even slapping one in the face. This incident, caught on camera, only added to his growing list of transgressions. The media soon made the story public, further tarnishing the family's reputation. In a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, the old chairman publicly apologized and stripped Gwon of all his corporate positions. Back in the courtroom, Judge Jiang handed over the murder weapon used to kill Xiao Jing to the authorities. The evidence was soon sent to Xiu Fan, whose nervous expression caught Gwon's attention. Fearing that Xiu Fan might testify and expose him further, Taebyun ordered for her to be silenced. Xiu Fan to save her. Young-woo was the first to arrive at the location and fought off Gwon's gang members. Though outnumbered, he managed to hold his ground until reinforcements arrived. In the chaos, Gwon attempted to flee in his car, but his escape was thwarted. Xiu Fan was successfully rescued, and with the evidence in hand, at the same time, Xiu Fan, who could no longer tolerate Gwon's oppression, was determined to take action. He had been humiliated by Gwon and had endured violent abuse. Unable to bear it any longer, he made a bold decision. Late one night, he went to Judge, armed with the wine-opening knife that had been used to kill Xiao Jing. He revealed that the knife presented in court earlier had been a fake. The judge, aware of Xiu Fan's past and knowing his situation, decided to show leniency. Although he had committed crimes, he promised to handle his case with understanding. Meanwhile, a prosecutor and 3 lawyers banded together, aiming to prosecute Gwon with solid evidence. They moved forward with their plan, and soon Young-woo and his team arrived at Gwon's office with an arrest warrant. Gwon, thinking it was a joke, dismissed them at first, but reality soon hit. Gwon was confronted by the old chairman, who scolded him harshly. However, Gwon, ever the arrogant figure, remained unfazed, enjoying his time lounging in bed. To free her troublesome son, the old chairman mobilized all her resources, ensuring Gwon was released. Gwon, now out of prison, was still a force to be reckoned with, but he encountered more resistance. Summer Yin, a girl who had been wronged by Gwon, finally found the courage to testify. With In-ah's help, she gathered the strength to speak out in court. And Young-woo presented the video evidence, showing how her agent had been coerced into delivering her to Gwon. The video evidence, while impactful, was not shown in the courtroom as it could harm the victim. Instead, it was handed directly to the judge, who accepted it as valid. With this, the legal proceedings moved forward, and GW1 found himself facing the harsh reality of his actions. In the midst of the trial, however, the old chairman, desperate to protect her son, arranged for another assassination. He couldn't bring himself to kill Dong-ho. The two men discussed the matter in the car, but when Dong-ho exited the vehicle, a mysterious man suddenly appeared, stabbing Zhou. The assassin framed Dong-ho for the crime, planting the weapon in his home. Dong-ho was immediately arrested, adding a new layer of complexity to the already tangled web of corruption. Meanwhile, a wealthy second-generation heir, known for his violent outbursts, sought treatment from an old traditional doctor. The doctor advised him to calm his anger by putting himself in others' shoes. This only enraged the heir further, and he lashed out, nearly killing the elderly doctor. The heir's sense of entitlement and disregard for others was evident, especially in his treatment of the women he had abused. As the girl dropped everything she was holding, it became clear that she was the second victim, Minshi. Terrified, she dared not resist GW1. He forcefully lifted her and pushed her toward himself. GW1 attempted to solve the issue once again by offering money, hoping to prevent Minshi from testifying in court. However, his plan backfired. Ina, along with Summer In, found Minshi, who was once her close friend, and they both had suffered at GW1's hands. Encouraged by Summer, Minshi bravely took the stand and exposed GW1's numerous crimes, making it harder for him to escape justice. At the same time, Dong-ho, wrongfully imprisoned, his assistant, frustrated and desperate, sought out Jin-woo. Initially unwilling to defend Dong-ho, Jin-woo, as a lawyer, was committed to preventing the wrongful conviction of any innocent person. He realized that without Dong-ho, it would be impossible to stand up to GW1 and his father, so he reluctantly agreed to take on the case. Jin-woo's plan was simple: to free Dong-ho, they needed to uncover the real culprit. Jin-woo and his colleague, Hee-bu, put their plan into motion. They managed to extract a crucial piece of information from one of GW1's associates. The old chairman, fearing that Zhou's memory would expose the truth, sent assassins to eliminate him. However, the assassins mistakenly targeted the wrong person. Jin-woo arrived just in time to intervene, and the police quickly apprehended the assassin. Back in the courtroom, Jin-woo made a dramatic entrance, rushing to the defense table, explaining his tardiness and suggesting that the prosecution should answer for the delay. The prosecution, receiving an anonymous tip, immediately moved to dismiss the charges against Dong-ho. After Dong-ho was released, he visited his adoptive father's hospital bed, but tragically his father passed away shortly after. On his deathbed, his father handed Dong-ho a crucial piece of evidence: a CD containing recordings implicating the old chairman in a plot to have Dong-ho killed. Meanwhile, GW1's rage erupted once more when he discovered a video recording that exposed his violent actions. Enraged, he smashed the laptop, showing his true, uncontrollable nature. This footage was soon leaked to the media, forcing GW1's father to intervene. To cover up the scandal, GW1's father pushed for a prominent to help clear his son's name. However, the old chairman was taken aback when he saw the long-haired woman walking toward them. It was Ina, who had reclaimed her position as a prosecutor. Ina had been strategically placed to work on GW1's case, a plan devised by Youngwoo. Dong-ho, still unaware of the larger plan, was shocked to learn of Ina's role in the operation. It turned out that this was all part of a bigger scheme to infiltrate the old chairman's circle and gather the evidence needed to bring GW1 down. At the same time, the reckless second-generation heir, fueled by anger and arrogance, once again lashed out at his employees, even slapping one in the face. This incident, caught on camera, only added to his growing list of transgressions. In a desperate attempt to salvage the situation, the old chairman publicly apologized and stripped GW1 of all his corporate positions. Back in the courtroom, Judge Jiang handed over the murder weapon used to kill Xiao Jing to the authorities. The evidence was soon sent to Xiu Fan, whose nervous expression caught GW1's attention. Xiu Fan was abducted, but Youngwoo immediately realized something was wrong and rushed to save him. Yongwoo was the first to arrive at the location and fought off GW1's gang members. Though outnumbered, he managed to hold his ground until reinforcements arrived. In the chaos, GW1 attempted to flee in his car, but his escape was thwarted. Xiaofan was successfully rescued, and with the evidence in hand, Jinwoo reopened the case regarding his father's murder, presenting the damning evidence in court. The bloodstained weapon was shown to be the same one used to kill Xiao Jing. However, Jian Fang raised an objection. He pointed out that the source of the murder weapon was unclear, meaning it couldn't be admitted as valid evidence. The judge insisted that they disclose the informant, or it wouldn't be considered useful. Just then, Xiaofan entered the courtroom. He testified that after GW1 murdered Xiao Jin, Xiaofan had to reveal the weapon and explain that it had been hidden out of fear that he would be blamed for the crime, intending to use it as proof of his innocence. With the testimony and physical evidence in place, the judge ultimately ruled that Jinwoo's father was innocent. Although he was no longer alive, at least Jinwoo had managed to clear his father's name before his memory faded completely. It was hard to believe the audacity of such a spoiled rich kid. After being sentenced to death, he fled, leaving his father to clean up his mess. Desperate to protect his son, the old chairman tried everything, even leveraging his connections to save him. Not long after, the final trial began. To everyone's shock, the entire panel of judges was replaced. This caught both Ina and Jinwoo off guard. GW1 smirked at the turn of events. Ina immediately called for Xiaofan to testify, but the defense lawyer repeatedly objected, and the bribed judges refused to allow her testimony. It seemed like the case was heading in a bad direction. The onlookers in the courtroom couldn't bear to watch the injustice. The judge adjourned the trial temporarily. When the court reconvened, Ina suggested calling a second witness, and surprisingly, the judge agreed. The defense lawyer and GW1 were stunned. Jinwoo had managed to find the judge just before the trial, revealing that Zhang, the chief prosecutor, had been arrested for corruption. Jinwoo presented video evidence of the arrest. He warned the defense lawyer that if he continued to support GW1, he would be next. Faced with this threat, the lawyer reluctantly complied. The head of security also testified, exposing GW1's entire criminal history. Ina had also called Jinwoo to testify, but the defense team opposed it. However, the judge approved, and Jinwoo directly accused GW1 of being Xiao Jing's murderer. To cover up his crime, GW1 framed Jinwoo's father. During this time, GW1 showed no remorse, continuing to commit further crimes. Ina submitted all the evidence, and the judge finally sentenced GW1 to death. Upon hearing the sentence, GW1 erupted in anger, insulting the judge and even attacking his own defense lawyer. He then jumped on the table, charging toward Jinwoo, but was quickly stopped by security. Even after being sentenced to death, he was still defiant. The old chairman, disappointed in his son, could no longer tolerate his reckless behavior. In the face of such a disastrous failure, the old chairman had no choice but to disown him. Overcome with despair, Fabian broke down in tears. With no hope left, he ultimately chose to hang himself. Meanwhile, the next target was the old chairman of the Riheo group. With Dong Ho and prosecutor Ina's cooperation, the old chairman was arrested for murder and violating special trade laws. Just when prosecutor Hong thought he could escape unscathed, Ina and the investigation team arrived, exposing his involvement in accepting billions in bribes from the Riheo group. The man was truly a disgrace to the legal profession and could no longer avoid the law's grasp. In the end, Jinwoo, fearing that his memory loss would cause trouble for Ina, recorded a video message to say goodbye. Dong Ho took over the law firm that Jinwoo had left behind and promised to continue the legacy of fighting for justice in Jinwoo's name. Years later, when Ina ran into Jinwoo again, he didn't recognize her. She chased after him, holding up the token his mother had left, but Jinwoo didn't remember. As he turned away, Ina was overcome with emotion, silently shedding tears. Even though all his memories were gone, there was still someone willing to walk alongside him, even if he no longer remembered them. Thanks for watching. Please like and drop a heart if you love the series.